All right, so I think we can get started. So good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this entrepreneurship panel presented by the Bryant Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization and sponsored by the Office of Alumni and Parent Engagement. My name is Kay Jenkins, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations for Bryant CEO, and I'm currently a junior at Bryant and excited to moderate tonight's panel. So tonight, we're lucky enough to hear from 5 Bryant alumni who have created their own journeys by becoming business owners and entrepreneurs. So we first have Ignacio Pinilla, class of 93, who's a franchise owner of British Swim School. We have John Del Vecchio Jr., class of 98, owner of Parabolix Research. We have Laura Vaudrain, class of 05, who's the president of Brandon Promotions. We have Corey Adams, class of 2006, founder of Southern Swells Brewing. And we have Jeff Rubin, class of 06, who's the co-founder of SportsMe. With hard work and determination, they've become successful business owners and have a great deal of stories, ideas, and advice to share with you all tonight. We would love to bring these panelists to campus to network and meet with you all in person, of course. However, we must do our best to work around this pandemic, and we're excited to have them on Zoom tonight. But first, before we get started, I'm going to hand it over to Jess Dang, who is the Program Officer for Alumni Engagement, to say a few quick words.
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jess Dang. I'm a class of 2016 and now a staff at Bryant for Alumni Engagement Office. On behalf of the Bryant Alumni Association, I would like to thank all of our alumni for joining us here tonight, and a huge thank you to our panelists for participating in the panel discussion shortly. But before we start, I want to talk a little bit about our campus-wide event that is coming up next week called Bryant Giving Day. Bryant Giving Day will be on Wednesday, October 28th, where the community or the Bryant community will come together as one. So this includes students, faculty, staff, parents, alumni like yourself, and friends of Bryant to make gifts to more than 125 different designations that support programs and organizations such as the Entrepreneurship program across campus. Now, we hope on October 28th, you would consider participating by making a gift of any size to support your favorite destination on campus and encourage those who also care deeply about Bryant to do so as well. You can also become an advocate for Bryant Giving Day to further your support, but I'll be sure to link those websites in the chat. So if you're interested, please check them out and sign up. And if anyone has a question for myself, I'll put my email in there as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess. So just a reminder that all gifts for Bryant Giving Day can be directed to the Entrepreneurship program if you choose. Okay, so to start, we're going to do just a very short kind of, icebreaker activity, just something different for on Zoom. And then after that, we'll give introductions of our panelists and let them kind of speak and begin discovering all of their entrepreneurial experiences. Okay, so if everyone can please turn their webcams off. Okay, great. So now, to start, we're going to ask this first question. If you would like to be an entrepreneur someday, turn your video cameras on. Okay, awesome. Glad to see some people here turning their video cameras on. Nice, nice. Okay, now everybody can kind of turn them back off. See a bunch of blinking screens here. Okay, and now if you currently own your own business or run your own business or found your own business, turn your video cameras back on. Okay, awesome. Just kind of giving everybody an idea of, where everybody's at, and just kind of thought it would be cool to do something a little bit different to start out here today. Okay, so now everybody can turn them back on or leave them off, however you guys feel comfortable for the rest of the panel. So all right, so without further ado, let's meet the panelists and hear about where they are from, where they're currently located now, their major when they were at Bryant, and more about their business and maybe what it does, a little bit of information. So Ignacio, let's start down with you.
Hi, my name is Ignacio Pinilla. I went to Bryant in the 90s, early 90s. I know you asked about our Bulldog story. Well, there was no Bulldog back then. Well, that has changed. Currently in Berkeley, California. I'm originally from Venezuela, so just imagine the big arch that I went through. to get here, but I'll give you a snippet as it relates to entrepreneurship. I came from Venezuela and chose Bryant because of being one of the three B's of business in those days, Bentley, Babson, and Bryant. I took a lot of entrepreneur courses, and it was highly helpful. But when I got out of school, I went into import-export, hoping to bring out the products of South America to the world. And in those days, started some e-commerce back in the days of HTML shopping carts, which many of you may not know. But it was a simple email that send everybody's credit card, and you ran it through a regular terminal in your desk. Eventually, the dot-com bubble burst, and it was easier to just be employed, take a paycheck, contribute to a 401k. When the recession hit in 2009, I revisited the idea of starting something on my own. I started developing some ideas, such as apps to connect dog walkers with owners that needed to do so, started drawing the business plan, finding the funding. Actually, at that point, New York State, where I lived in New York City at the time, offer a program where you could turn your unemployment check into just seed money to contribute to your business. And again, someone offered me a job. I did the projection and said, well, it would take me 3 years to make that money in a year. So I took the job. That took me in a customer service career, which expand many industries and many companies. And most notably at the end, I ended up with Nespresso, part of the Nestle group. Lots of promotions, spent like 8 years. They moved me from New York to San Francisco, and then their plans change. And I was offered just to stay on as an analyst, reduce my salary, which also didn't make me happy. And that made me reevaluate what I wanted to do. I spent about a year or so looking into things, and then the pandemic hit. And that's when I looked into the idea of franchises, so I could start something off the ground, plug and play. Did not want brick and mortar and wanted something that interested me. I've always loved the water. I surf, I swim, I kayak, I do anything that I can do with the water. So swimming seemed like a good fit. It's been a long, hard journey. I started the process early this year, made the decision back in June. Usually a ramp up that would take 90 days. It's still 6 months, and I'm still waiting for pools to open to be able to secure them. But if all goes according to plan, in 2 to 3 weeks, I should have the first kids in the water. I've learned, and there's one thing that Brian told me, investigate, use options. So we pivoted. Our model usually works out of pools and gyms and hotels. Those are currently closed, and there'll probably be a good time before they open. So pivoted to find residential pools, and today I just finished with one and balanced the chemicals, and in 2 weeks, like I said, I should have the first kids in the pool. And that's how I got here.
Awesome. All right, let's move down to John.
Yes, hi, my name is John Vecchio. I'm class of 1998, and just like Ignacio, there was really those 3B schools. Back at that time, I grew up in Syracuse, New York, so I wanted to be somewhere reasonably close to home, but far enough away to have my own life. And Bryant was a college, actually, back at that time. It was a very good accounting school. I studied finance and accounting, although I really liked a lot of the liberal arts classes, which I found tremendous value throughout my career. I've been all over the place, but live in just off Lake Champlain in Vermont now, and started my career in 1998 in Wall Street in the height of the internet boom. And I saw that that was going to be a disaster and that trillions of dollars would be lost in owning those stocks. So I went to the dark side, which is shorting stocks and betting against companies. Landed a job at a very prestigious private research firm that sold research to hedge funds. That led into a hedge fund job. Caught the bust of the internet bubble So that worked out great. And then saw the housing bubble that was going to collapse soon thereafter, 3 or 4 years thereafter, and started another fund to capitalize on that. And then we converted that into a publicly traded fund that's traded now on the New York Stock Exchange. It's an actively managed exchange traded fund. And I believe it's probably the oldest equity fund that's traded on the NYSE in that format. I'm also involved in a long short strategy, and I do research for that. And then my third and most recent gig, for lack of a better word, is that I have a lot of experience working in the financial newsletter and publishing space. I've written 3 books on investing. And what I do now is I help companies tell their story, and I pair them up with newsletter writers to get that story told to the investment community and to just regular investors, which are called retail investors. But instead of getting paid by the company, I just make an investment in the stock itself. And so the first one is, it's literally a gold mine. There's a lot of gold there that nobody knows about. And the company was a mess, so we cleaned up the company. Kind of an Indiana Jones type thing. It's way in the middle of nowhere. I can't really even tell you where it is right now, but so the idea is to then get that out there in the investment community. People that invest in gold tend to be very, very aggressive buyers of those stocks. And I have a microgrid company is the next one. So I'm kind of excited about that because it's a little bit like a public relations and investor relations, but I actually have skin in the game as opposed to, charging the company a fee. So the opportunities there are pretty significant. So those are kind of the 3 gigs that I have going right now.
Great, thanks, John. Laura.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Vaudrain. I am the president and owner of Branded Promotions. We are a boutique marketing firm located in Providence, Rhode Island, and we basically offer in-house marketing services for businesses that don't have an in-house marketing department. We also specialize in promotional products and customized apparel, website design, and graphic design. I chose Bryant, much like the other 2 alumni that just spoke. It was one of the 3 Bs back in the day. And when I visited campus, I just absolutely fell in love and knew that it was the place for me. I had a great experience at Bryant with all of my professors, and I really feel like it helped me to prepare for my entrepreneurial journey. After graduating, I went to work for a marketing firm in Boston. And while I was there, I saw a lot of untapped potential. And I thought to myself, why am I going to do this for somebody else when I think I can do it better? So at the ripe young age of 22, I decided to go out on my own and start my own business. Absolutely loved it. I mean, there was a lot of difficulty and hardship in starting from nothing, basically, and being very young. But fought through that and got some great clients to get me started, and traveled down that road for a little while, building my business, establishing myself in the industry. And then the bug bit again, and I started another business selling stationery and invitations. So kept doing my marketing gig, and then also did this invitation stationery company and ended up opening a boutique on Main Street in East Greenwich. From there, I've ran that business for almost 5 years. And then I decided the retail storefront business was not for me. So I actually was able to sell that to a wedding planner who she still runs the business to this day. And then I turned my focus back to my business, and instead of I kind of fulfilled myself and my creativity desires by growing what we did. So where we started out basically just selling the promotional products and apparel, we grew more into the graphic design and then into website design. And then from there, I actually took on the role as a consultant, and I started working with startups. So I would come in and be their marketing department and help them figure out their strategic plan for startup and bringing products to market. So that kind of fulfilled that creative outlet for me. And that's where I am now.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. All right, Corey, let's hear from you.
All right. I'm Corey Adams, class of 06. So I'm a born and raised Rhode Islander, and relocated down to Jacksonville Beach, Florida in 2008 now. So I've been here for 12 years. I was actually planning on going to school to be a chemist. So I was actually planning on going to UConn, and I kind of pivoted last minute, decided to go to Bryant and pursue marketing. Always had a lot of interest in the sciences, the arts, took a marketing class in high school and enjoyed it. And honestly, that one class kind of set me down this path. So after graduation, worked in the mortgage business for a little bit. This was like right at the height of subprime lending. So kind of saw that heading down a very dangerous path and figured that wasn't a great career for me. So ended up taking a job at Fidelity Investments up in Marlboro. Worked up there for a bit and then transferred with them down to Florida. Basically just worked as a broker for a while and then in some various sales roles there. And kind of figured out pretty quickly that the corporate world was not for me. Didn't really enjoy it. Didn't really enjoy working for other people very much, and kind of wasn't fulfilling a lot of my entrepreneurial desires. So I left to go work for another Bryant grad from class of 05. His name Joe D'Ambrose. I don't know if anyone knows him here, but he had a little web design company called Palm Tree Creative that's still in operation today. I worked with him for probably about like 18 months or so, and then decided I wanted to take a run at that type of business myself. So I opened up a small branding and web design company. Did a lot of the services, Laura, that you talked about when you first started, a lot of web design, graphic design, overall marketing consulting. Still have that company open. I would say I maybe dedicate, 4 to 5 hours a week to it. So still creates a nice little income stream, but I've now shifted to my current job, which is co-founder of Southern Swells Brewing Company. So we started planning the brewery in 2014. We opened in 2017. My business partner is a fellow Rhode Islander. He was a URI grad. So him and I both ended up down here around the same time and decided to open the brewery together. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. So planning on continuing to do this for the long term.
Great, thank you, Corey. And Jeff.
Cool. Nice to meet you all. I'm Jeff Rubin, class of 2006. I was also a marketing major, but thinking back, if I could do it again, I would probably be a marketing / computer systems or learn to code or something along those lines, for sure. Since that's part of the work I do now. I went to Bryant because thinking back, I think my mom was like, you should go to Bryant. I know successful people. And I said, that sounds great. It was either Bryant or University of Florida, and Bryant had better athletics. So I decided, no, I'm just kidding. So Bryant was the choice. Florida would have certainly been fun. I love Bryant. I love most of my professors. I think it's an extraordinary school. I think that it definitely gave me the foundation and the infrastructure to kind of go about the journey how I got to where I am today. After school, I graduated and I worked at the Staples corporate office right in Framingham, Mass. A lot of Bryant students go there, or they did. And it was great. Had a great opportunity. I was in a sales function early on, then got promoted a couple times and did biz dev to their corporate division, B2B division. I enjoyed it. Had some great bosses who mentored me. And did I love sales? No, but I was good at it. And it kind of I found my groove through storytelling, which was so important. And after that, I moved to LA for a few years. Worked with a couple of friends on some cool companies, moved back and really wanted to step outside my comfort zone, which is something I tell students all the time now, is really just do something that you're not used to. And I lucked out and I started a company that is now we're human and was a global force that was just on the verge of disrupting the entire company culture, employee recognition space. And so we scaled really fast when I went on board, and I helped them drive their corporate solution. So companies from 1,000 or say like 500 to 10,000 employees. And that group just took off. That company is now, I think, $1.4 billion valued company. And so a lot of the work that we did was a stepping stone to that. After that, I got recruited by one of our sales guys to work at a highly ventured Silicon Valley startup. And, I just wanted to venture out and do something more entrepreneurial, I guess, before I really even knew what being an entrepreneur was. Found myself there again. I ran a biz dev team and it was great. Money was good. I enjoyed it, but did I love it? Absolutely not. I think it just, it got to the point where I was happy, and then one day, and truly, this is how I think the best companies get started. There was something that came up, and a pain was uncovered, and that pain was quantified by speaking with many people about it, doing a little bit of market research myself, just with core friends and an audience on LinkedIn. And before I knew it, I was out of that company, and I was on my way to starting what's now SportsMe, with one of my brilliant, I have multiple co-founders who are all amazing. And the best thing about startup world is it's not all about you. You absolutely need to find smarter people than yourself. And so I did that, which is great. SportsMe has certainly changed over the last 2 years since we had a concept, launched an alpha test, which was super successful, raised a little bit of money, really bootstrapped. And now we're at a point where we just launched with the second largest publisher in the US, have tremendous backing from some of the best investors in sports and media and gaming, guys like the CEO of DraftKings, got people who used to run ESPN and Fox Sports. Today it's, we're in an exciting place. We're about to raise more money. We're getting traction. And, we're already a venture backed company, but we'll be raising a bunch more money right now. And essentially, for anyone who doesn't know, and probably most of you, other than Corey, SportsMe turns real life conversations, sports for now, into engaging, gamified pieces of content that allow content creators to create authentic face-to-face discussions on things that they're passionate about. We have really looked at the short form video monetization of the world in different social media platforms, and every social media platform is a publishing tool. We're another form of publishing tool that thinks of ourselves as remote collaboration tool, which a bunch of you mentioned when the pandemic started. It actually was really good for our business. The world was exposed to the need for better remote collaboration and content creation tools, which a lot of the other platforms didn't provide, and ours did. And so we didn't really pivot. We were kind of just kept going on the way our roadmap. And we're super busy. And I would tell everyone who is in school, do not be entrepreneurial off the bat when you graduate. Go work at a Fidelity, like Corey said, or some big company, and really get your foot on the ground. It's really, really hard, and it's frustrating, and there's many more down days than up days, but you do it because you love it. And if you don't love it, don't do it. But we love it. We have midnight team calls every night for good or bad, and thank God they're all good. And I have a 7-month-old baby, so life is literally insane. But that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jeff. And thank you, everybody, for that. I always think it's interesting to hear everybody's stories and how they got to where they are. So that's really great. So we'll kind of move into some questions and talk about first some challenges and obstacles that all of you might have faced. And then just before that, for our audience members, if you had any questions you'd like to ask at any point, feel free to pop them in the chat there. And at the end, we'll leave about 15 minutes or so to answer questions. And then you guys can also unmute yourself and talk for our audience members if you'd like to voice your questions out too. Okay, so let's start back over with Laura. So what would you say some of the hardest challenges that you've kind of faced so far? And, have you had any failures, throughout your experiences? And if so, how have you kind of overcome them?
Sure. So I guess the biggest challenges came pretty much in the beginning of starting my business, and that was the ramp up of getting clients. Because in the beginning, you're making cold calls and reaching out in any way, shape, or form that you can, and you don't really have a lot of credibility. You don't have a client list. You can't say you've completed all these projects or that you've been doing something for a long time. You're new to it. So that was really hard. And like Jeff mentioned, more down days than up days back then. A lot of no's, a lot of you didn't even get to, give your pitch, so to speak. And then I guess one thing that sticks out in my mind that was a huge learning experience for me. I had an opportunity with UBS, and this was probably just about a year after I had started my company. And they placed a huge order with my company. It was the biggest one I had ever had, and I was psyched about it. And I was psyched about the opportunity with UBS. And I didn't know everything that I needed to know. And we printed these puzzle globes for them, and we printed, I want to say it was like 2,500. And at the time, this was a big deal for me. It was an expensive item. And UBS has a very intricate logo. They've got the 3 keys and the UBS. And at the time, I didn't realize the importance of proportions and the way that the artwork needed to be laid out. And so we ended up, the artwork was messed up on the globes. So they had 2,500 globes with their logo that was distorted, and they couldn't use it. So this was my first experience with a client issue, and it was a very expensive experience, but it was a learning opportunity for me to realize that you need to step up and you need to make things right for the client. And that is something that I have carried with me throughout my entire career, that first and foremost, client satisfaction comes first, because you don't want to have to continuously be going out and getting new clients. So you want to maintain the ones that you have. You want to make sure that they're happy, that you exceed their expectations. And ultimately, we came through. We were able to replace the plaque that their logo was printed on. We got new ones printed, delivered, and in time for their event. So that was, I would say, definitely something that shaped the way that I handle clients and orders and proofing and all of that stuff going forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Laura. Ignacio, I'd like to ask you kind of the same question. Have you had any challenges or failures? How have you kind of navigated through them? I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, my clicker was on a different part of the screen, not the one that we did. Well, I say the biggest challenge for me in starting a business was myself. It was easier to take something that would cover the bills, give you a good lifestyle. But as Jeff was saying, did I love it? No. But in many times when I found myself in the 2009 recession, planning, then the idea about funding always comes up, and that's a scary one, and it's always an intricate one, and you start reading through the financials and it scares you. And then at that time I was also looking on the side. I got offered something, like I said in my initial introduction, that my business plan show I would be making that for myself in 3 or 4 years. I had a baby on the way. He's now going to be 11. So I put things on hold and went to work. And like I said, the biggest challenge, besides the funding, it's also going for it, believing in yourself, and truly realize that old saying that if it's something that you love, it doesn't feel like work. I will say, as tough as this last 8 months have been, with COVID and getting a lot of no's. Laura's story about not having the track record and everything truly resonated to where I'm at right now. It's like I'm trying to run your pool, but I have no other pools running. So how are you doing it? Luckily, with the franchise system, it always gives you that credibility. So that has helped overcomes those obstacles. But it's just a matter of being resilient. Like I said, this should have been a 90-day process. It's been 180 and counting. And you just gotta keep on going and believe that your gut is correct and that you're in the right path.
All right, great. Thank you, Ignacio. So now we're going to move into more about managing a team and, what those experiences may be like. So John, we'll start over with you. So what would you say that you do on a daily basis to manage your team, kind of keep on track, keeping the lines and keep, maintaining your goals?
So as Jeff mentioned, he has a midnight call. I'm asleep at midnight. So we do a 8 o'clock in the morning call every day, just between me and my main partner. So I have one person that I'm equal partners with. Everyone in our group or in our business is a partner in the business. And I think communication is a big key to success. So we talk every single day, and that allows us to go through the several things that we have on our agenda or the balls that are in the air to make sure that they're constantly being addressed and nothing really kind of slips through the cracks or gets too far off of track. The other thing is we don't have a huge team, so we actually accomplish a lot with few people, and I deal with people or hire people that are competent at what they do, and then I let them do their job. So I'm not a big micromanager. Everyone who works with us I've known for at least 10 years and up to 17 years. So I would not hire anyone actually in my own business that I don't know or haven't done business with. It's not really necessary. So a key to our success is just having competent people and then letting them do their job. So and then having sort of certainly an open line if they need to talk with me. The benefit of that is by not micromanaging them every single moment of the day is when I do ask for something or I have a question about what it is that they're doing or something that we're working on, people are very responsive because they respect the fact that that I am, interacting with them at that point in time, and I'm not just there to check up on them and sort of lord over them as a master. And so I think that's kind of really the two keys to our success: constant communication, and we do it the old-fashioned way. We actually pick up the phone and talk. So we're not really into Zooms and Slacks and things like that. So I would say interpersonal. Obviously, can't do it right now with COVID, but to the extent that you can communicate with people in person, I think is an advantage also. So communication and competence are kind of the two things that we focus on.
Great, thank you, John. So all right, so Jeff, we'll move over to you with a separate question. So what would you say that you attribute your success to? What made you stand out from others? And how did you get to what did you do special that you got to where you are today?
So I'm gonna kind of pivot that question slightly. I'd say for me, it's honestly, it's been about working well with others. And it's been about, again, I mentioned it before, I have amazing co-founders. And they're truly special people. They're brilliant at many different things that I'm not. So I'd say the biggest thing is I stick to my strengths. My strengths are not building complex financial models with thousands of lines of projections. I don't do that, so I don't waste my time on that. I stick to what I'm good at. I surround myself with people who are smarter than me, and kind of like what some of the guys were saying. What I've learned, one of my co-founders, really genius guy, ran a multi-billion-dollar gaming company called the Game Show Network in LA, and he's really I'd say over the last 8 months or so, I've really gotten better at process around everything. And so that midnight call is literally around how can our process get better tomorrow and how did it fail today? And to your point, you asked about, I think you asked Laura, how do you fail or do you fail or whatever? we constantly fail every single day, but it's a small failure, and we take that and we learn from that. It could be social media, quantifying how social media impacts in downloads to content to engagement per any user analytics every single day. And it's all about process. And so I've really honed my kind of process skills and managerial ability through that. But to me, it's about people who you surround yourselves with, and really also I'd say having a mentor. I have an amazing mentor, one of our investors, and that's been really key for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Corey, I'm going to swing that question over to you too. What would you say, you kind of attribute your success to?
Yeah, so actually a lot of what Jeff said rings pretty true to our business as well. I think it's key to have good partners. My business partner is my closest friend. We've known each other for 20 something years. I trust him implicitly, and I think it goes both ways. So that's a huge factor. And same thing, kind of like to stay in my lane. I'm a marketing background. I think I understand the promotional side of the business and the customer service side of the business perhaps better than he does. And he happens to be an incredibly accomplished brewer and makes some of the best beer I think you can find anywhere in the country. So, those two skill sets working together have really been a huge factor in our success. And then secondly, it's the people that work with us. We run an extremely small team as well. So, with production, because we've kind of think about our business as essentially two parts. We're a manufacturing facility, manufacturing a product from scratch. And then we're also a bar and tap room where we're, have all the components that would go with running a bar. So we kind of split those two apart. My business partner and I have to wear a lot of hats naturally. So we handle most of the production ourselves. So we're in here doing all the brewing, doing all the grunt work. And then when that side of the business is done, we got to kind of step out front and make sure things are running smoothly. So as you can imagine, it'd be pretty impossible to do both of those effectively. So we have to rely heavily on our staff, and especially in the front of the house. Our bar manager and some of our bartenders have been with us since the day we opened, and we trust them to make, major decisions regarding the service to our guests, and have the full faith that they're going to do it the way that we want, and that they're bought into the type of culture that we've created here. So it's kind of all those things working together have attributed to our success. And then I think lastly, we kind of touched on it before we were joined by the rest of the group here today, but we were one of the early adopters to the New England IPA style in Florida. So if, a lot of you New Englanders are probably pretty familiar with it, because you can go to 50, 60 different breweries in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and have world-class New England IPAs. That's not really the case in Florida. It's still relatively new here, and there's only a handful of us that are focusing on it. So that's allowed us to really kind of create a name for ourselves in what would have been a pretty crowded space coming into this community. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Corey. So now just gonna see what you guys look for in an employee. And John, I'm gonna go over to you first. So what do you look for in an employee? How do you think they could stand out from somebody else?
Yeah, so I sort of answered that in my last response to your question, and that is that we try to hire competent people and then let them do their job. So just as Corey mentioned, we don't have a very big team. We don't need a large team to operate our business successfully. And so for instance, our marketing person, the guy that's in charge of marketing, has been doing it for 20 years. I worked with him myself at a prior job for 5 or 6 years. He's responsible for managers. So I think he probably knows what he's doing. So, just kind of let him do his job and then check in with him, as need be, as new information comes about our business and or new techniques that we want to try or new campaigns that we want to try. Certainly interface with him, but not watch over him every step of the way, every day. And the other thing is kind of just as someone else mentioned, sort of stay in your lane. There's things that I'm good at, and I know what I'm good at. And then you're also, I think, a product of your own experience. I worked for a company in the early 2000s, a major financial publisher that's an internet company that I'll not name, I guess, to protect the guilty, but they had the guy who invented Diet Coke was the CEO. He moved from Coke over there. The CFO of General Electric Financial became the CFO of the company. And so, you know, they had all these supposedly smart elders in there, and then they hired hundreds of people that really had nothing to do. And so all the tech people were on the fourth floor playing video games and eating pizza. And so I think that experience, and then of course they all lost their jobs a year and a half later when advertising rates collapsed and the internet started to go the other way. So you're somewhat a product of your own environment. So I run it conservatively in the sense that I hire to the extent I need to hire and no more and no less, and then take a relatively hands-off approach. And I find that people that know what they're doing don't need to be watched over every minute of the day. And we don't have like a manual, a corporate manual. We have no vacation policy. People have been allowed to work from home for the last 12 years. So it's, you know, we were able to go through the whole COVID pandemic really without any interruption to our business whatsoever. And so just kind of having a self-actualized environment has been extremely positive for our business. And we hit the ground running. We've never had a single month where we haven't been cash flow positive and profitable. And then lastly, as I mentioned also before, everyone's a partner in the business. So we all have skin in the game and we all participate. So there isn't somebody that's making $700,000 a year off the back of somebody making $35,000 a year. So you don't have those sort of issues around personnel, you know, people being jealous or, you know, envious or things like that. And there's no corporate clashes or whatnot. So it's worked out great for us, the model that we have.
Great, thanks, John. So we're going to move into kind of sort of our last topic here, and this is just advice to our audience for, you know, somebody who might be close to graduating, or any alumni that might be listening, or anybody at all. So we kind of like to go around to everybody and just hear a piece of advice that you could give to somebody who might want to be an entrepreneur or a business owner someday, or just general advice, whatever you think could really help somebody out. So Laura, we'll go up to you first and pose that question to you.
Sure. I mean, I guess my biggest piece of advice would be, don't get discouraged. There's going to be a lot of roadblocks along the way. And you just have to stay positive and keep working and realize that there's always going to be a better day ahead. So really, you've got to go into business knowing you're going to need a thick skin, and it's going to take time. There's no such thing as overnight success. I guess there is, but kind of in the lower percentile. So yeah, just make sure you've got a thick skin and stay positive and be ready to work hard.
Great. Let's move over to Ignacio.
I would say, most of all, believe in yourself and be curious. There's a lot of information. I think even nowadays, even more in the days of digital, you can, I mean, don't think that because one avenue doesn't look viable, that there isn't another one, or just be creative and come up with different ideas. If you do want to do something you love and you're ready to do it for yourself, just be tenacious, just keep at it. And like they've said, good days and bad days, it's all part of the big package. But if you keep your eye on the bigger picture, like I'm working with the mission of saving lives, teaching people to swim is going to save lives. That washes over any no, any door shot, and everything else that has happened as I've traveled through the lobbies of hotels and gyms, getting shut in my nose.
Thanks, Ignacio. All right, Corey, let's move up to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of reiterate some of the points the other panel members have said, but I think, you know, surrounding yourself with, you know, good people that you 100% trust and have complementary skill sets to yours, I think is a huge key to success. I think you need to commit 100% to being an entrepreneur. I'm not a big believer in, you know, kind of having this like little side hustle that you dedicate a few hours a week to as a new startup, I think it's pretty unrealistic to, in most circumstances, to grow that into a viable business that's going to, supply all of your income. So I think you need to dive fully into it. And in my situation, that meant, quitting a higher paying job that was stable and, dealing with the fact that I was probably going to make half the salary I was used to for the next couple of years while having a family and a mortgage. So, being able to, you and your family be able to make the decision together and commit to it 100%, I think is huge. And then like Laura was talking about, having the ability to adapt, adapt to changing circumstances. If COVID has taught me anything as a business owner, you need to be willing to make changes on the fly. The way it's worked here in Florida, there hasn't been a very good plan in place. And, a lot of times we're getting major changes to our business, like saying, hey, you're now closed and can only be open as a to-go only business. And that comes at noon on a Friday via a tweet from the governor. So being able to, within a moment's notice, completely pivot your entire business that's based off, direct to consumer sales in the tap room. And now I'm running, an online ordering for a pickup business, and making that happen within 24 hours is the kind of things that are going to happen as a business owner. So being able to adapt, to learn from mistakes, to be able to pivot your model of your business if that's what it takes to be successful, and being okay with that, So I think those are all kind of pieces of advice that I would give.
Love it. Thank you, Corey. Jeff.
So I'd say advice for starting a company or being entrepreneurial is don't seek starting a company. Don't just go out and say, hey, I'm going to start a company, and then go find something, and then you start a company and you do that. And then like, you know what, maybe that works. Best of luck. To me, it was, maybe I'll backtrack. The great Paul Graham, kind of iconic dude at Y Combinator, once said, the best companies in the world have started when it's all you uncover a problem that you have or your friends and family have. And if that happens, don't shy away from, asking questions and being curious and thinking what's outside the box. I mean, our concept is radically different than literally anything else in the world. And it just came from a problem that we found, that we uncovered. Other people think about it differently, and that's okay. Be curious, don't search things out. And if something, it can solve problems for you or other people in your entrepreneurial, like, screw it. Like, do some research, ask some friends, go hit up, if you're for anyone here who's in school right now, go on LinkedIn, go hit up 100 people or 1,000 people who are cool, awesome, or elite, or even Gary Vaynerchuk himself, or whoever. Literally send them a note and say, I would love to pick your brain. What do you think about this? And guess what? That's what everyone does. That's what I did. And it works. And you can't be shy. You just gotta do it, and just never that is the worst idea in the world.
Awesome. Well,
they're all way far away from doing that, but absolutely don't do that.
Thanks, Jeff. Some great advice. All right. Last but not least, John.
Yeah, so I would say a couple things. One is that a lot of people spend a lot of time on their financial plan and the business model and trying to raise money. But as you're going through that, also think about the culture that you want to create in the business that you are building, because culture, I think, is extremely important. And we have a very strong culture at what we do and where we are. And so when you have things like the Black Plague come in for the first time in 100 years, you're able to, I think, navigate that a little bit better when you have a strong foundation from which to work on. So culture is very important. And there's a lot of successful businesses that I think actually have a crappy culture. And maybe they're not as successful as they could be, or not as successful for as long as they could be if the culture was better. And then two, I think that the more outside your idea is, outside the norms of everyday life for people, maybe the more revolutionary it is. You really need to think about your own mental and physical well-being, your own mental and physical health. Entrepreneurs have, someone mentioned that there's a lot of tough days out there, and that's certainly true. Entrepreneurs certainly have higher levels of depression and things like that, because it is tough. You're probably going to face the word no quite a bit. And you have a vision for something that other people don't see. If they did, that business would have been started a long time ago. So you have to certainly persevere through that. But I find that the more physically and mentally fit you are, the easier it is to kind of deal with those things that are thrown at you, and to perform at your highest level. So some days, it's, to me, a lot of what I do is really no different than being a professional athlete. And I know I have some friends that were professional athletes, so I was able to, talk with them about this. And there's, it's very physically and mentally demanding. So don't neglect that, as you're building your life-changing, world-changing idea. That'd be my advice.
Awesome. Well, thanks, John. And thank you, everybody. That was some great advice. And I think that everybody here will be able to kind of take that and run and use it throughout their lives. So that's all the questions that, I had for the panelists here. And I hope that, was able to provide a background of what it's like to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, and, how everybody kind of got to where they are. So I'd love to open it up to everybody else's questions. I've got a few that were already submitted, but love to hear if anybody would like to voice their questions out, or, unmute themselves and ask now, somebody specific. Feel free to kind of do that now. The awkward moment of silence. All right, well, if anybody would still like to ask questions, don't feel free to unmute yourself, but I've got a few here that have already been previously submitted. So the first one is, and this is to everybody, anybody can hop in here. What did you learn specifically at Bryant that encouraged you to become entrepreneurs?
I would say one thing I learned from a lot of the professors at Bryant was the power of research. They instilled curiosity in me, even from taking the geology class, which I looked at it like it was rocks for jocks, and I was just going to fulfill a requirement. But the professor really, taught us to dig further, as well as Ken Sousa, who was the advisor for our fraternity. Again, it was just about being curious, and the Koffler Center was new then. Being able to learn a lot about digital research has certainly grown a lot since then, but certainly the tools and the curiosity mindset is the same.
Great, thanks, Ignacio. Does anybody else want to throw anything quick in there?
Yeah, I would just say, I think what's unique about Bryant versus a lot of other colleges they go to, particularly now that I'm down here in the South, there's a lot of really, big campuses that are really kind of pushing the traditional career paths. So I think what's unique about Bryant is that they view entrepreneurship as a legitimate career path. And, convincing my parents of that was probably a little bit more challenging because, they both came from the work for the same company until you retire kind of mindset. So going to a school that had a culture where entrepreneurship was welcomed and encouraged, I think was a huge catalyst in pursuing this career path.
Great, thanks, Corey. So another question I got is, how do I factor in my pay salary when raising money from investors?
That is a very complicated question. Hopefully you have very complex financial models that will tell you exactly how much you can make and should make, and how much your entire team should be making based on all these projections you have. So a loaded question, but have a good CFO.
Absolutely. Anybody else have anything to throw in that?
Actually, yeah. So I actually don't make a salary. I participate in the profits. Now it's paid out every month, but and we've never really needed any external financing. So I haven't had to build one of those sophisticated financial models. But as I mentioned earlier, I have one main partner. And so, we succeed to the extent that the business succeeds. And I've never really thought about, what I should get paid as a salary. And that's, as I mentioned, also everyone's a partner in what we do, not equal partners, but to a certain extent, pretty much everyone eats what they kill. So that's a very, flat organization. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's not one person making $700,000 off the back of somebody else making 35,000, and that kind of creates some envy and other issues. So I haven't had a salary in 12 years.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for us, it was a little bit of a unique situation because both my partner and I are doing all of the brewing, where, an alternative would have been for us to hire brewers to handle that portion of the job. So I think, and we do have a third partner who's a silent investor, and he was the CFO of Hasbro Toys for better part of 20 years. So certainly was looking at the detailed financial models with a fine-tooth comb when we were raising capital. But, for us, I think that was like an easy way to justify a salary, was to make it a very reasonable. So, it's enough for us to live off of, but certainly not, enough for me to grow any sort of wealth. So that was enough for us to cover our essential expenses and for me to live, to pay my mortgage, things of that nature. But then we started it, sharing in the profits of the company as we became cash flow positive. So, that's the bigger picture. Is the base salary is enough to cover expenses, but, the real earning potential of the business comes in the sharing of the profits.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. So I think we have time for just one more quick question. And it was, after you kind of choose, your business, if somebody was to go out and do that, what would be the first couple of steps that you would do? So I don't know if one person wants to kind of take this.
Sure. I mean, I've helped clients start up businesses as well as starting my own business. And there's definitely the initial startup phase is you come up with your concept, your idea, what your business is. And then from there, you need to figure out what your business name is going to be. You've got to search the legal databases, see if your business name is available. From there, you've got to formalize the company and do all of the legal paperwork to form the business. And then you're going to want to look into, I guess, kind of concurrent with coming up with your business name, you're also going to want to research domain availability and other businesses that might have a similar name and possibly do something similar to your business, so that your first step isn't that you're competing with an established business. You're making sure that your name is unique, your identity is unique, and you can also kind of get that that domain that you need to have your web presence up and running.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
And I would add to just validate that people need whatever it is that you want to start. And friends or family, start there. That's how every single great company has got started. So that's very simple. And then do all the things that Laura said, because those are all great.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
Say, if your business is something that's kind of locally minded versus, more of like a national presence, Jeff, this is something you touched on earlier, like reach out to people. I think before we even got into the early stages of writing out a business plan and doing all the other research that was involved in that, we started reaching out to other successful breweries, particularly in this market. And much like you said earlier, Jeff, you'd be surprised how responsive everybody is. Like, willing to share their business plan with you, level of responsive. Like, and thinking about that seems crazy that like you're going to open up what essentially is viewed as a competing business in the same market as somebody else, and they're sharing financial projections with you or telling who they use for suppliers and why they use them. And at least in my industry, that was both a huge validator of the concept, but also a really good starting point in the early stages of writing the business plan, was having, not just national research that's relevant to our industry, but actual local tangible numbers that I could, use in financial projections was key.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Corey. And thank you, everybody here. I think that tonight, this was amazing to kind of hear your stories. And it's awesome to hear, from people that were in our position. A lot of us are at Bryant now. And it's really cool to hear these successful stories about people that, we're in our position. So we'd like to thank all of the audience members tonight for attending the panel. And we hope that it was really able to inspire you to step out of your comfort zone and achieve anything that, you want to set your mind to. We're really hoping that next semester, we're also able to hold another event to keep our alumni close to our Bryant community. First, I'd like to thank the panelists for taking the time tonight and giving us that real world advice that we wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. And I'd also like to thank the Bryant CEO Club for their help in setting this event up. And I'd also like to extend a huge thank you to the Office of Alumni and Parent Engagement for sponsoring this event, putting in all the hard work and making it happen. So thank you, Kathleen and Jess. That was it was great. So just a reminder, everybody, you can connect with all the panelists on either LinkedIn, find them on social media. If you have any questions, anything like that, I'm sure that they'd love to talk to you and answer questions and give advice down the road. So I hope everybody has a great night and stay safe. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cade. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.